Everybody smiles in the same language. A smile, let your light come shining through.
Welcome to the Celebrate Happiness Roadshow podcast. I'm Sandra M., coming to you from Santa Fe, New Mexico, the land of enchantment. I interview people from all parts of the world about what happiness means to them. What are they in love with? In each episode, we'll give you a key to happiness to include in your life. And of course, we'll play a happy tune from my live Celebrate Happiness Roadshow.
A smile doesn't cost you anything. But there's so much good.
Today we're talking with John Grael, a longtime resident with deep roots in the community of Santa Fe, New Mexico. John has a wealth of experience across multiple fields, including website design, development, social media marketing, and graphic design. As part of the Red Cross, he has supported military service members, veterans, and their families throughout New Mexico, notably establishing a communications station at Holloman Air Force Base during the Afghan refugee crisis. He also served as a First Aid and CPR instructor, reflecting his commitment to emergency preparedness and community safety. In addition, John has been an active volunteer with the Civil Air Patrol since 2001, holding positions which include pilot, cadet leader, and emergency services coordinator, all while also serving on the New Mexico Governor's Board for Search and Rescue. Currently, John collaborates with Sandra McKnight, whom he has worked with for 25 years, by producing the Celebrate Happiness Roadshow podcast, which continues his dedication to both creative and community endeavors. I'll say that last paragraph again, just in case. Currently, John collaborates with Sandra McKnight, whom he has worked with for 25 years, by producing the Celebrate Happiness Roadshow podcast, which continues his dedication to both creative and community endeavors. Welcome, John. I am so excited to talk to you about happiness and what makes you happy in your life.
Well, thank you for asking me, Sandra. I know that of the 28 that went before me, I've listened to them, and I'm kind of honored to be included into the group. So thank you for asking, and I'm looking forward to letting people know about what makes me happy.
Oh, well, good. So, what does make you happy? And the other thing is, why is it so important in your life? Because people feel that happiness actually makes them healthier. Literally a direct connection between being happy and choosing happiness in their life and their health. So that was one thing that has been said to me a lot of times. So what about you? What are you thinking? What are your thoughts?
Well, I do think that happiness is part of your life. I think there's a lot that goes into it as well. As you start to age, eating right, exercising, being able to slow down a little bit and enjoy the relationships that you have. And I do think that happiness is part of that longevity that we're all kind of seeking. It's a balance. You want to lead a healthy life. So then that way you can continue to do the things that make you happy. Being unhealthy may also lead to, being unhappy because you can no longer do the things that you like to do. You need to maybe change gears and start thinking about, ways to do some of the things that you still like to do without having the physical ability to do them. But I think that kind of works together, eating right, exercising, and then those do allow you to have happiness or pursue some of the things that do make you happy.
Right. I agree, totally agree. And because I'm of an age where I understand that if you want longevity, you have to pay attention not only to your eating and so forth, but also to your mind and how the thoughts that you have. What do you have? Do you think about that? A lot of people have a lot of negative thoughts, or they get into a loop of some sort, and before you know it, they're a little bit depressed. What do you think about that?
Well, I think a lot of times people get caught trying to, or they constantly think about the things that they really don't have control over. You've got a meeting coming up and you start to panic about that meeting. And, the meeting is going to unfold whether or not you have control over it or not. And so spending your time worrying about things that you can't control, I think that's something that I've learned as I've gotten a little bit older, that there are just some things that you've got to let happen. You don't have control of the future. You can't do anything about the past. And so the only time that you've got a little bit of control is what you're doing now. And there's sometimes very little control that you have over those. And so it's not worth worrying about those, and to try to find, the best side of any encounter that you're having. I think it's important for us to all look at where we are at the present. I know that one of your interviews, the individual was talking about always being in the present and being able to deal with that. And I think that kind of resonated with me in terms of letting go of some of those things that we just can't control. The more you try to control, the less control you actually realize that you have. So I think that's how I feel about that particular aspect.
Wise thoughts indeed. Yes. I wanted to ask you, do you think that happiness is a choice in life? That people actually can choose to be happy? Or are people actually born more or less happy and then fall into patterns of unhappiness, or maybe trained to be unhappy? Or what's your thought on that?
Well, I don't think that we are born happy or unhappy. I think that some of it may be genetic in terms of what you receive from your parents, and how you deal with stress and how you're physically built. I think a lot of it's also environmental. If you are in an environment that is unhappy, that sometimes it's difficult to move forward with being happy yourself. I think that some of that can be learned. I think a lot of it has to do with how the person's built, how their mind is established while they're growing up. Being born, I don't think that we're predisposed to anything. I think, again, we do have some control over that when you're looking at a situation that could make you anxious or make you frustrated or make you angry, that you do have a little bit of control in terms of how you deal with it on your own. I think these come from learned experiences through life, and that's why I say, the older you get, the less likely I become to try to control or manage a situation, because it could lead you down a rabbit hole in terms of trying to, change the situation. In terms of people being predisposed that way, I know that's a question that you've asked other individuals, and I think a lot of it was somewhat split, that you are born happy. Things that you encounter through your environment can change that depending on your external situation, what you're exposed to. I think that a lot of it is how you're exposed to things, how you're brought up in terms of the relationships that you have with your family, with your siblings. So I think a lot of that is what you encounter as you grow. And you have the capacity for happiness. I will guarantee that everybody has the capacity for happiness. What they choose to do about it and how they choose to go about what they've encountered to ensure their happiness, sometimes that's the individual's responsibility.
Join Sandra M. for her live performance of the Celebrate Happiness Roadshow, a toast to love and happiness in life, an uninhibited musical adventure guaranteed to awaken your happiness vibe. Celebrate with upbeat rhythms, love songs, and fun stories, some told by you in the audience. Sandra's musical guest and accompanist, Todd Lowry, sings his hopeful and happy originals. To book Sandra M. and the Celebrate Happiness Roadshow, email sandra@sandramcknight.com. Celebrate happiness with Sandra M.
Right. I love the way you put that. We have a capacity for happiness, and what you choose to ensure your happiness is up to you. I love what you just said about that.
I've had the benefit of listening to what other people, what makes them happy. And so, you listen to it and then you begin to reflect on yourself and to see, is that something that I do? Is that something that resonates with me? Or is that something that I don't quite go there? But does that apply to me? Is that something that I could pursue now? Is that something that I never thought about in that particular way? Is it something that I can change my own mindset? Now I've heard what somebody else has said about what makes them happy and how they pursue it. Is that something that I can pursue and change in myself as well? So I think it's the benefit that I've had by being able to be exposed to the various interviews that you've given that have made me kind of reflect on the same questions that you're asking other people. And so I think that it's benefited me. It's slowed me down a little bit in terms of being reactionary, being more contemplative, if you will.
Fascinating. Well, I'm so grateful for you doing what you do, because we do the interviews and so forth, and you put them all together and you add the music, which I think is very uplifting. And just the way you put everything together, yes, you are listening to them, and it's amazing. I wish everybody had the opportunity to listen to all of them, because this is what we're trying to do, is create a community, not telling people what to do or telling people this is how you might try, but just letting people hear other people's viewpoints and how they go about creating happiness in their life, and saying, as you just said, does it work for me? Maybe this opens my mind. It's sort of like traveling. They always say on the PBS, travel broadens the mind, right? You see different people. So we're sort of listening to people's different views on happiness, and, as you say, take what we can and leave the rest behind. So my question now is, okay, what are you in love with? What are you passionate about? What do you do every day that makes you feel good about life?
I could be sarcastic, and I could say what makes me passionate about life is thinking eventually of retiring.
Okay.
But that's really something that I've thought about in terms of traveling, spending time with family. Not necessarily the 9-to-5 grind, but that's one of the benefits of doing what I do with you, is that it provides flexibility. I can do these things, late in the evening if I need to. If I get up first thing in the morning and I feel, I got to knock this out, got to get this taken care of, then I can. But in terms of slowing down from all of the other things that we do in life. I'm kind of active in a variety of areas, and so I think that picking and choosing what I can pay attention to, because sometimes when you slice your life up like that with many interests, that sometimes you're not devoting yourself to one or the other. I guess, what is it? A jack of all trades, a master of none. I want to make sure that when I get to that point where I want to slow down, that I'm focusing on those things that I want to devote myself to and get something back from them, so I can participate fully in them, and then get the enjoyment that I'm hoping to benefit from.
Right. Well, I think you're passionate. I mean, I know a little bit about your life, and I know that you like being in the Civil Air Patrol. I know that you are a pilot. You have your own plane, a small plane, I think it is. I'm not exactly sure. So that's something you're passionate about, isn't it? Flying and...
It is. It is something. I don't have my own plane, and that's I fly with the Civil Air Patrol. It's been a few years since I've actually flown myself, but in terms of being able to, the Civil Air Patrol is the auxiliary of the Air Force, and so the aircraft that we use, the regulations that we follow, the uniforms that we wear, they're all regulated by the Air Force, and that's where we get our funding. We utilize their aircraft. They're all single-engine, small aircraft. We do a variety of things. Coming up in November, we have a Navajo airlift, and that's where we're taking coats and clothing, warm clothing, to the Navajo Nation. We do that annually. We fly the items in an aircraft, and so we take them to their destination where they can be sorted and then distributed. Looking for lost individuals, that's usually what we started out doing. Now we're assisting in different types of clients, if you will. We work for the Air Force. We do a variety of services for them. We work locally with the National Guard. During the pandemic, we were flying not only the vaccines when it was available, but we were also flying the tests that we were gathering, and that we were taking them to Arizona to be processed, because in New Mexico we didn't have the capacity to handle the numerous tests that we were receiving, and so we helped with the state, the National Guard. It's a rewarding experience because you're making a difference in other people's lives. You're really adding to your own legacy in terms of what you give out, you hope you get back. And so I think just my upbringing and exposure to my own experiences, that's something that I've learned, and that I guess time will tell, but I believe that that's something that you reap what you sow. And I think helping others is a good way to get back what you need.
Join Sandra M. for her live performance of the Celebrate Happiness Roadshow, a toast to love and happiness in life, an uninhibited musical adventure guaranteed to awaken your happiness vibe. Celebrate with upbeat rhythms, love songs, and fun stories, some told by you in the audience. Sandra's musical guest and accompanist, Todd Lowry, sings his hopeful and happy originals. To book Sandra M. and the Celebrate Happiness Roadshow, email sandra@sandramcknight.com. Celebrate happiness with Sandra M.
Absolutely. They say that actually, well, I say this in my show, but it's true that having loving thoughts being grateful for what you have in life and making other people happy, giving to other people, actually lengthens your telomeres, which is a part of your cell, every cell of your body, that helps you to stay young. When you don't do these things, the telomeres don't grow. So it's the thoughts, it's the actions, it's the sense of community. And I know you long enough to know that you really do like to be of service to people. I mean, you're also with the Red Cross. And I remember during the Afghan refugee crisis, when you were down there, where was it where you were? An Air Force base? Where is the Holloman Air Force Base?
Yes, that was at Holloman Air Force Base. And so we got called out to help establish a communications and supply tent. And so that was something that I was there for the month. We got called out in the end of September is when they called us out, and we established that the 1 October, and we were there until the end of the month. And so that continued. Once we were kind of the Band-Aid, similar to what's going on the East Coast now with the hurricanes. The Red Cross is that immediate Band-Aid to provide shelter and services for the public, just as we did for the Afghan refugees. The military base provided the facilities, and we just provided some of the services that those individuals needed when they arrived here in the United States. And it's similar to what we're doing on the East Coast in terms of establishing shelters where individuals get out of harm's way. They have the opportunity. It's not a hotel. It's not a luxury facility. We're basically getting people out of harm's way, so then that way they have the tools and the necessities in order for them to start that process of connecting with those national resources once they come on board. We're kind of like the first responders in many ways, that we're on scene, establishing shelters, coordinating feeding, helping them get in terms of maybe mental health services or physical physicians, those types of things that people need after they've encountered a disaster similar to what we're experiencing now.
Yes, absolutely. And I know that your specialty is web design, development, all these back-end parts of the communication through the internet, etc. And I know that you had didn't you create the communication station so that the refugees and the Afghan refugees could call back to Afghanistan, to their families and things of that nature? Through the cell phones, you had to have the...
We have what's called international phones, and those were for the individuals just to call back to home to let them know that they have arrived, they're safe and sound. So we provided those. We also provided a Wi-Fi network around our communication tent, which kind of became a hub in the mornings. Once we showed up at 7 o'clock in the morning, we established our communications network so that individuals would get benches from the other tents that were there, and we would become kind of the meeting place where they were able to use WhatsApp to reach out to their family, use social media, use Wi-Fi, so then that way they were able to talk longer and be able to exchange information with their families, kind of a welfare type of check. And so on the other side of the tent was providing services or goods that once they arrived at the camp that they may not have had, things like formula for infants, diapers, just hygiene items, maybe additional clothing, those types of items for the individuals as they arrived on scene. We established that, and then when we were winding down and getting ready to hand over to government agencies, they basically came in and watched what we were doing so that they could replicate what we were doing, maybe even improve on it, because they were going to be there for a longer term. And so they were taking what we had done and improving it, lessons learned. And so then that way
Yes.
they were able to have that continuity of providing their services for the refugees.
Absolutely. So it just seems, when I asked you the question, what you're in love with, what you love to do in your life, and obviously you love helping people and using all of your expertise in web designing and in internet and all those aspects of the back end of being able to establish people to communicate with each other. And then just, as you said, we sow what we reap. And I just think that's fantastic that you have such a desire and such a commitment to helping people be prepared in life when there's disasters, and also reaching out when people get lost. I know here in New Mexico they do get lost in the mountains and so forth when they're hiking, and doing all these wonderful things. Where did you get, I don't know if you want to say training, or where did you learn, how did you develop this ability to reach out and help people and be so much, to be there available for people?
Join Sandra M. for her live performance of the Celebrate Happiness Roadshow, a toast to love and happiness in life, an uninhibited musical adventure guaranteed to awaken your happiness vibe. Celebrate with upbeat rhythms, love songs, and fun stories, some told by you in the audience. Sandra's musical guest and accompanist, Todd Lowry, sings his hopeful and happy originals. To book Sandra M. and the Celebrate Happiness Roadshow, email sandra@sandramcknight.com. Celebrate happiness with Sandra M.
I don't know. I'm still turning out this way. It's a never-ending process. I think that a lot of it just happens to be, I did have the luxury of, I grew up in a time where we rode bikes without helmets. We drank water out of a hose in the front yard. We were out until it got dark, and then we had to be home. And so we had a lot of flexibility. We had a social environment that allowed us to be somewhat independent, and to kind of see our peers and see what types of lives they had. So I think in terms of helping others, I think a lot of it had to do with my religious background. And I just thought, one of the things that the Red Cross does is it's doing community, and that's where we're looking at communities that don't have the resources to be able to sustain any type of resilience. You're looking at the fires that we had here in New Mexico this past year, and they depended on outside resources. But now we've got to go into those types of communities to be able to make them more resilient. So then that way, when these types of things happen, that they're able to fulfill what they need locally. And I think that that's kind of a driving thing that I've realized throughout my life, that a lot of times we have to depend on our neighbor. We have to depend on people that we don't know for assistance. And sometimes that's a scary thing. We've all been in a situation at one point in our life that we needed to ask somebody for help. And knowing how you feel, having that empathy of, you know what, I was in your shoes. I know how you feel. I'm not going to be able to solve your problems completely. I'm not going to be able to maybe even solve your problems, but maybe I can point you in the right direction so that you can get the help that you need. I think that just because you're, a citizen of the earth, that you know your own experiences and how you felt as you went through them. And I think that that's something that everybody understands. We've all needed help at one point. So when you're giving back, you're kind of going back to the time when you needed help and saying to yourself, you know what, I know how this person feels. I think I can help out. And we just kind of all help out where we can.
I think this is a marvelous way to end our conversation. You have mentioned empathy, you've mentioned compassion, you've mentioned being a citizen of the earth and community, how important that is. I think that is a beautiful way of just bringing our conversation about happiness, because if you have a sense of community, if you can empathize with your neighbors and with your family and with people in general and have compassion as a citizen of the earth, we can also have better control of how we deal with the earth and not to abuse the earth. I'd just like to get your final thoughts on what you think about the climate change, what you think about how we as human beings need to pay more attention to the earth itself and the way we live on the earth.
Well, there's always that political, if you will, that, when you're talking about climate change, does it exist, does it not exist? And whether or not you believe it or you don't believe it, I think that we all understand some basic common sense. If it was Mr. Spock from Star Trek, it would be logical conclusions. And that's where we need to reduce our carbon footprint. We do need to take care of those resources. I've got grandkids, and I'm looking at what things cost in terms of education, housing, and I'm thinking, what are we going to leave behind for them? Do we just get to be, a ripe old age and say, sorry kids, but you're going to have to pick up the slack and try to fix the things that are broken? I think that we all have a stake in that to be able to pass along a functioning world, or to at least mend the things or work to mend the things that are broken. So then that way they have the opportunity to tackle the problems that they're going to encounter when we're not here. They're going to encounter different situations that are going to be just as difficult to them as the ones that we're facing now. We need to try to give them at least as much to work with as humanly possible, and that means we just got to take care of our own stuff. And I think in terms of global warming or the things that are happening now within our life, that we need to try to fix as much of that as possible, so then that way we can continue as a species here on Earth.
Yes, and I love the fact that we can leave a better life for our children so that they can have a happier life. And if we don't deal with our problems, then it's pretty hard to live a happy life, don't you think?
Oh, I agree. And that's why, if I was going to sum it up, I would think that, I would encourage everyone to go through and listen to my 28 predecessors in terms of the podcasts. Listen to them. And, some of the stuff you're not going to agree with. Some of the stuff you will agree with. Some of the stuff you'll say, that applies to me. That's me big time. Or it's like, what? That has nothing to do with me, and I totally disagree with what that individual said. But I think you'll walk away with being able to take in what each of those individuals have brought to the table, and you can kind of compare it to what you've got going in your own life and utilize it to form your own future happiness, and how it applies to your own situation and how you can make that perpetuate itself as you move forward in life.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Oh, you're welcome. It was a pleasure. It was a lot less scary than I thought. So I know that another thing you're going to tell people is that if you want to share your happiness story, to reach out to Sandra. And from my experience, it was very painless. Nobody got hurt. And it was fun, and it's not nearly as scary as what one would think. Oh gosh, I don't know what to say. That's how I was a little apprehensive at first, but you get a chance to start talking, and Sandra just kind of pulls stuff out of you. So I would recommend everybody give it an opportunity and reach out to Sandra. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Breathe deeply. You're tense, your shoulders are tight, and you feel as though you just might lose it. We all know that feeling.
Instinct may tell you to take a long, deep breath to calm yourself down. When you feel stressed, work through these steps. Close your eyes. Try to envision a happy memory or a beautiful place.
Take a slow, deep breath in through your nose on a count of 4. Slowly breathe out through your mouth or your nose on a count of 4. And repeat this process several times until you start to feel yourself calm down.
Newsflash. Please sign up for your copy of our Keys to Happiness at SandraMcKnight.com. Thank you for tuning in to Season 2 of the Celebrate Happiness Roadshow podcast. And if you enjoyed the conversation, please help spread the word by sharing with your friends and family. Before we go, I'd like to thank today's guest, John Grael, for sharing his happiness story. And to share your happiness story on the Celebrate Happiness Roadshow podcast, send an email to Sandra@SandraMcKnight.com.
Turn your smile on,